I have a secret weapon for the midpoint slump. So if you are struggling with the midpoint in your story, this video is for you. I have 8 writing prompts, which are my secret weapons in the battle at the midpoint. The first one is reverse expectations. Look at your story and identify your main characters, dreams, goals, objectives, and then look at that and flip it on its head. What your character is fighting for in the first half of the story, you can take that and have them fight for something totally different in the second half of the story because you took all of their dreams and goals and you flipped them upside down. An example of this is in a romance story where your main character thinks they're falling in love with their perfect mate, and then they discover that they're actually falling in love with a very unexpected someone else, and it changes the trajectory of the story. The next one is raise the stakes. You want to ask this question: what is the worst thing that could happen to your protagonist? Maybe what the protagonist is trying to fight for, it could turn out to be something much worse. It could end up being the downfall of everybody they love and not just their own goals. What if the villain's sinister plan is actually way more sinister than they initially thought, and the fate of the entire world hangs in the balance? Consider taking the consequences of the protagonist's actions and choices and making it something more extreme, something more sinister. The idea with this is to add tension and conflict in your midpoint so that you raise the stakes. The next one is new information. What new information can you reveal to increase the complexity and keep the reader guessing? This is about revealing a hidden secret that changes the game for your characters. And an example of this would be perhaps your character is an elite assassin and they've been given a new mission, and they go to complete their mission and they look through the scope of their rifle and they discover that their target is actually their high school sweetheart that they thought was dead. And so now your character has to decide, am I going to complete the mission or am I going to abort it and deal with the consequences of that? What new information, new character, new challenge, or even a new villain can you reveal in your story? This can take your story to a new level. The next one is time crunch. This is where you put a time constraint on your character's obstacle or challenge, whatever they're facing. This can be a countdown to a deadline. It could be a ticking time bomb. Anything that adds that time constraint and adds and increases the tension in your story. And this is a classic example. There's a ticking time bomb and it's going to go off in 60 minutes. And your character has to figure out how to deactivate the bomb, save the people, save the day, keep the world from getting destroyed, all within that time constraint that's been put on it. What event in your story can you add a time element to?
Angie and I are excited to announce the release of our new book, The Uprising.
This is a gripping dystopian fiction novel about surviving a global catastrophe centered around a virus and genetic manipulation.
It's available right now by pre-order until February 13th at a very special discounted price of $1.99 for the ebook.
Or you can get a free advanced copy by joining our launch team. The link will be in the description so you can help us launch this book.
Thanks for supporting the channel and for checking out our new book.
This one is Force a Choice. Present your protagonist with a very difficult decision that they have to make. And it's really good if it taps into their fears and weaknesses and has major consequences in the story. So look at your protagonist, figure out what their fears and their weaknesses are, and ask yourself, what kind of choice can I force onto my protagonist that's going to tap into those fears and weaknesses? Now we have hidden identity. In this, your protagonist discovers a key character has a different identity, some secret identity. And this forces your character to reevaluate their alliances and who they trust and who they don't trust. Look at the characters in your story and ask the question, perhaps one of these characters has a hidden identity that I haven't tapped into yet. Perhaps all is not as it seems. You may have overlooked the potential in one of your characters, but you may be in the midpoint, and this is a really good time to reevaluate if one of your characters perhaps is a double agent, and this is a great time to add that depth to your character. Now we come to past trauma. This is the place where your character has a suppressed traumatic memory that they're just not remembering that could be part of their motivation. And so you can get to this place in the midpoint, and your main character maybe they could get hit in the head and suddenly remember that traumatic past story, which could shift your character's motivation for the second half of the story. This one is one of my favorites for the midpoint. It's false victory. In this, what you have is your protagonist, they have a triumph. They reach some victory, but it comes unraveled, and pretty soon they're in a worse place than they were before. This is a classic tool used in the midpoint, and if you answered my previous question, what is the worst thing that can happen to my protagonist, you may have already gotten to this point. Think about the challenge that your character is trying to overcome and ask this question. What if my character reaches their goal and discovers that there's something much bigger going on? What they thought was going to bring victory was actually just the beginning. So what is the bigger problem in your story? Remember to consider the specific story that you're writing when you're choosing a midpoint prompt. The goal of a midpoint prompt is to change the trajectory of your story and force your protagonist to evolve and change. Explore different prompts and see where the creativity goes. Don't be afraid to be creative and try different prompts and see where it leads in your story, because you may try one and end up not using it, but then you can go use a different one and you can find one that will work for your specific story. Using these writing prompts can help you break out of the midpoint slump and really engage your reader and keep them reading to the end. Now, if you like this video, you will love this one. And I would love to hear from you in the comments which writing prompt helped you break out of the writing slump. I will catch you in the next video.